Hi, my name is Rebecca Kavanaugh, and I love watercolor. So this first part of this landscape painting, I'm pouring on the water. You need lots of water to do kind of a wetland scene. Now I'll start laying down the color. I actually made a mistake here. I don't usually put the line of yellow first. I would do the sky first. It's okay though. I'm gonna fix my mistake. I'll lay down some blue, and when it touches the yellow, it's gonna make a bit of a green, but that's okay too because I'm going to add green later since this is a landscape. I'm using some different shades of blue, cerulean blue and aquamarine blue. So now I'm coming in with my green. I'm keeping everything loose and wet. I like the little blooms and when the paint kind of just spreads out. I like that effect. So I like the paper to stay pretty wet. Now I'm mixing together ultramarine blue and red to give some shades of purple, violet, sort of laying down a landscape effect. Now I'm just going to come back in with some greens. I mixed together the ultramarine blue with different yellows to see what kind of greens I can get. I didn't really have a plan for this painting, so now I'm just going back in with some more shades of purple. I like to sort of, I see now that I have sort of a water pond or little gathering of water, so I'm trying to outline that. More green. For this painting, I want the forefront to be darker and then it's going to get sort of lighter as we go back. So I'm adding in some mustardy yellow. Here, while the paint is wet, I take this bamboo stick that I have with a pointed edge and I do some scratching. You can also use a credit card or anything else with a kind of pointy edge and just scratch lightly, not too hard because you don't want to rip the paper. This makes the effect of grass and weeds. Now I'm just coming back in with some paint at the bottom of my scratches. I like the effect that that gives. Makes a kind of grassy effect. Now I'm just dropping in some blue and just letting it sort of move in the water. The paint is still wet there. And I'm doing a bit of blue here just to add a bit of effect like water. I feel like the back needs a bit more definition now, so more purple, sort of just lines here and there to give the effect of the land in the distance. Now this part makes me nervous. I'm going to start adding in some trees in the distance. I want them to be really loose. I'm using the blue, the ultramarine blue, and I just have to go and stay loose. Adding it a bit of yellow. I want these trees to have different colors. And sometimes there's a hair. and I'm trying to get the hair out. I feel like the part here where I was picking at the paper to get the hair got too dark, so I'm just removing some of the paint with a paper towel. I'm adding in some scratches again with my bamboo stick where the limbs would be on these trees. Try not to go too straight, just sort of just give an impression. I'm just going to add in 2 more trees on the other side, kind of smaller trees. Now I'm going to add some paint over where I scratched out the limbs, and it gives a kind of cool effect of bark. Now I need to paint under the trees to add the shadow effect, because it would be dark under the trees and kind of around the trees. I'm going in with some ultramarine blue. I also added some colors in the trees. I like to just pull the paint up. Now I'm just going back to the trees and adding some darker colors for shadow. Now I'm adding in some darker greens to create even more shadowing under the trees. I'm adding some more yellow here to brighten things up. I feel like it's a little too dull, so I wanted a brighter yellow and some brighter greens. I've let the paper dry now, and I'm sort of doing some dry brush technique. So basically you want your brush and the paint to be as dry as possible, and then you sort of just scrape the paint on, and it gives kind of the effect of land and texture. Now I'll start adding in some color to give the effect of grass. I'll put greens, blues, yellow, probably even some purples. Now I'll go back and work on my trees. I go back and forth because I wait for areas to dry, depending what kind of techniques I'm using. Sometimes I want the paper to be wet, but sometimes I also like it to be dry. And so for a bit of detail in the tree trunks and the limbs, I wanted it to be dry. I'm looking at this painting and I've decided that the trees on the left should be a bit bigger. So I'm going in with some blue-green paint. I mixed blue and green to make kind of an aqua color, and I'm just highlighting around the edges to make them look bigger. Now I'll add more shadow on the right side because I still need it to be darker. That area to me needs to be dark. Sometimes I tape my paintings down so then you have clean edges. In this one I left the edges loose, which I like that as well, especially for landscapes. But I didn't like the way the bottom right corner was, so now I'm just adding some colors. I went in with the aqua blue and now some purple just to kind of balance it out a bit better. Now I'll add some white highlights. With watercolor, you can't use white paint, so there are various products you can use. You can even use white acrylic paint, but you can't use white watercolor. So I'm using bleed proof ink just to add highlights. This is a point in a painting where I just have to step back and take a look and see where I need highlights and colors, maybe shadows. So you see I'm adding color right now, and then I sort of smear it with my finger sometimes. And I feel like it needs a bit more color. Now I'm coming in with my straight brush. I put lots of green paint on. I mixed ultramarine with yellow to make a nice bright green. And I'm just dabbing some lines here and there. But I don't want too many lines because this is a loose landscape, so I'm not trying to add specific details. I want to keep it loose. I'm pretty much ready to wrap up this painting, but I'll go over with some colors for shadows and effect, and maybe a bit of dry brushing just to give texture. A bit darker by the trees, the limbs. After I added the dark blue, I'm looking at it now and I'm thinking I just scratch it up a bit for more texture. So I'm coming back in with my bamboo stick and just adding a few scratches. I think I'm done. I always come back and add a bit more color here and there, but also have to know when to stop. I hope you've enjoyed this first tutorial of mine. It's been fun, and if you are interested in seeing any of my other art projects, you can search for me on Facebook and Instagram at Art by Rebecca Kavanagh.